Hey there, and thanks for joining us for this episode. And as we get started, I wanted to remind you to make sure that you subscribe on YouTube and follow us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and wherever you may be listening to podcasts. This podcast is sponsored by servehq.church. ServeHQ is a place where you can train your volunteers and leaders online through effective video courses. And really, that's just the beginning. You've probably dealt with that frustration of trying to coordinate meeting times for training, trying to organize materials for helping people learn how to, whatever it may be, do some type of volunteer work or procedure at your church. And it quite honestly can just be really frustrating. Well, ServeHQ simplifies all of that by, again, putting it all online, allowing people to watch it and learn how to do ministry at your church at their pace. You can learn more and start using ServeHQ at www.servehq.church. That's www.servehq.church. Thanks to ServeHQ for sponsoring this episode. Well, now I look forward to presenting the main content of today's episode as we continue to advance a reformation of fellowship, partnership, and gospel hope right here on the Church Advance podcast.
Hey, everybody. Welcome back to the Church Advance podcast. I'm in the studio today with my friend Luke. Luke, it's good to see you, man. How are things going? The end of the summer, wrapping up here?
Yeah. We're kind of in that, we call it false fall here in Tennessee. I don't know how it works down. I guess it's just always summer down there in Florida.
It's endless summer is what they call it here in Florida. So,
but we call
it's super hot.
Yeah, false fall. We start to see a little bit of that kind of like fallish, semi-cool weather, and then we turn around the next week and it just hits you right back in the face for summer round two. True fall lasts for about 6 days here, typically.
I hear you.
Winter.
All right, in the winter. Man, I saw you had your baby dedicated this week, or was it last week at church? What a blessing.
This past
how exciting.
Sunday.
Yeah, good for you guys. And that just continues to be such a great miracle and an exciting thing for your family. Man, today I'm excited. I'm going to, this is one of those kind of where I grabbed something that I saw, that I read about, and it was kind of a current topic on a ministry group that I am a part of. It's called the Pastors Connection Network. And I think all you should be a part of it. It almost, I don't know if this is what they did it for, but a lot of what used to be, the Idea Network, I think a lot of those guys kind of came over to this, formed a new group. It's similar stuff, a lot of action, 9-10 posts a day about all kinds of ministry topics. I found it to be pretty good to be a part of. I'm probably not the top contributor. I don't say much on there. I just kind of read. But there was a statement on there that was made in a post, and it ignited quite a bit of commentary. And I thought, well, that's interesting. Obviously I've thought about this before. People talk about this a lot. Churches question, churches, members, pastors have lots of questions, it seems, about this particular subject. And really, the subject boils down to pastoral compensation. And the statement that was made, it was made in a graphic, and then it kind of, then there was all this commentary that flowed, was this statement, okay? And then this statement, man, set off a firestorm. And I wanted to bring what I think to be some biblical clarity to this particular subject. Here was the statement. Take money out of preaching, and we will see who was called. And I mean, that's a provocative statement. And that was kind of the graphic there. It was thrown up on this feed. And then the guy made a statement about it. And then, of course, from all sides, this statement comes in. And as with every, controversial type statement, I guess, there's going to be a real level of truth to it in some way. There is a lot of truth to what's behind this statement. What is behind this statement? What's behind this statement is some people are only doing ministry because it's their job, basically. And I almost immediately there's a joke that gets attached to it, and that's, if you're in ministry for the money, you're in the wrong business. Like, if you're trying to make money, then you're probably in the wrong business. I know there is a business side to it. Even this recent docuseries called "The Religion Business." I know there's some of that out there, but in the normal, everyday, boots on the ground guys, we talk about the average church guy out there, pastoring 75 people, 100 people. There's not much money to be made in ministry. So I think what's really at the heart of this is this: if you couldn't have preaching as your primary income source, as your career, would you still preach? And it brings up the conversation of money in ministry, pastoring and compensation, because there were people that chimed in on this and it was all over the place. It was like, wait a second, I've been in a church where the preacher was using the church and all these sort of things, and there was everything from pastors should never take money under any circumstances for their services, to, on the other end, healthy statements about pastoral compensation, and it just is kind of all over the place. So it has hit me one day, and I don't even think I commented on the post. I might share it I might share this podcast on the feed as maybe a more dense response to this whole idea. What does the Bible say about men in ministry and money? What does the Bible say about pastoral compensation? Doesn't say anything about pastoral compensation. What does it say about financial stewardship related to pastors? What about does the Bible talk about poverty theology, which basically is the idea that preachers or ministers are supposed to be poor? What about the commercialization of ministry? What about all that? I mean, I think there is biblical clarity. There are numerous misconceptions. And I also think when you study the Bible, there is a healthy biblical practice that can go into financial stewardship, pastoral compensation, motives for ministry, and all of that. And so, Luke, that's what I did, man. I kind of wrote out some thoughts addressing the situation, and we have 10 kind of concepts, 10 principles that should weigh in to the discussion of whether pastors should receive compensation, and what relationship does, frankly, money have to ministry.
Yeah. Well, when you send me this quote, this screenshot, you're going to send me the notes here for this episode, or what probably will become a part 1 and a part 2. I'm thinking, well, I guess we'll find out here in a moment how far we get. But when I saw this, I was like, this is something that honestly has been on my mind a lot lately. From the angle of the bivocational pastor, Brian, I think you're probably the same. I mean, at this stage, I would say the majority of pastors that I've met are bivocational in one way or another, meaning
right.
that they're either just like, they have a main job and the church is, as far as from a compensation standpoint, the church is their side job, or the church is their maybe main source of income, but it's not enough, so they have to have some type of side hustle. And, as we'll discuss through here, I don't think there's any shame in either approach. And like you said, it's more about clarity and balance. And so I'm looking forward to diving into this. Now, before we do though, Brian, I have to say this, we got to shout out your book. We are just a few weeks out from the release of Rescued, and I am getting really excited for you. We're seeing a lot of good pre-sale numbers so far. So yeah, Brian, this is your second book, right?
It's my second book. I wrote The Pavilion during COVID. I never really did any publicity with it. I've been actually debating about redoing it a little bit, kind of doing a second edition with maybe pushing out there a little more. It's more about a story of how God used a broken situation in our church to really teach me and help me through the book of Psalms. This book, of course, is our family memoir, adoption memoir. It's got all kinds of biblical principles and stuff in it. Recently, I've been connecting with a lot of pastors that want to use this to buy bulk orders for like their bookstore or certain groups within their church, or maybe they've got an upcoming day that had like a Sanctity of Life Sunday kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
So I really want to encourage you, if I can help you that way, we can discuss maybe getting a good rate in for your group order. And I'm doing some couples retreats this fall, and they've ordered a copy for every couple that's attending the couples retreat. And so I'm just really excited about what it can do. It can inspire. I would tell you this: if you got somebody in your life that needs a miracle, they're just praying, they got a big burden. I think this book could really ignite some faith in that department. I found that to be true. I found that to be the number one feedback I've gotten from all the people that endorsed or reviewed the book was, this is so much more than an adoption story. This is a narrative about a big God who does big things. And I do think it would encourage you. So come pick it up, www.briansams.com/rescued. That's the way you can pre-order a physical copy of the book. And actually, I've got the proof copy right here on my desk. Isn't that cool? Proof copy. And it's about ready, almost done. And Luke, thank you for setting up the book cover design. This was all Luke doing this beautiful book cover design. A shout out to Aaron Chan. Photo cred to my friend Aaron Chan, took this picture. And then shout out to my new friend who did the what's it called? The work of formatting, Kelly Murray over at her business. You can check her out at prooftopublish.co. She did an awesome job formatting the book and getting it ready, because when I get into that space, I get lost. And so all you guys work together with me to help me produce a dream of mine to tell our adoption story. And it's out, ready to go. The other place you can pre-order, of course, is Amazon Kindle. Right now, the ebook is on pre-order. You can go. I think it's only $9.99 on ebook, and you'll be released to you on September 23rd. Lots of great things coming up, and y'all go check out the book. It's coming up just in a little over a month.
Yeah. So obviously, like I've said before, you've shared your story with me, and that's a great way of putting it, though. It's just a massive illustration of the goodness and the faithfulness and the power of God. So yeah, check that out. Like I said, briansams.com/rescued, or look it up on Amazon. All right, Brian, let's dive into the main content here. We're going to kind of set the stage here. And so I'm just going to kind of, just read off, your point here and let you expound. So
sure.
We're kind of start with point one here. Those who preach the gospel are instructed to make their living from the gospel.
Yeah, God ordained a system for those who dedicate their lives to proclaiming the gospel, that they would be financially supported by the community that they serve. This is not charity, it's principle. So in the main biblical text for this truth is 1 Corinthians chapter 9, verses 7 through 14. Now, you got to understand in the context a little bit here. Paul is talking about people who lay down their preferences, lay down their in charity to prefer one another. So this might apply to one that eats meat, one that eats herbs, one that celebrates days, so on and so forth. 1 Corinthians 8. Then in 1 Corinthians chapter 9, he uses himself as an illustration that he was willing to not take ministry compensation so that he wouldn't be offensive to this particular group of people. And it reads like this. His argument starts in verse number 7, 1 Corinthians 9:7. Who serves as a soldier at his own expense? Who plants a vineyard and does not eat its grapes? Who tends a flock and does not drink its milk? So the first illustration Paul uses to explain this is just generally speaking, people are compensated for what they do. Soldiers, farmers, etc. Then in verses 8 through 11, he goes to the Old Testament law. And he literally says, he quotes from Deuteronomy 25:4, and he says, "Do not muzzle an ox while it is treading out the grain." And then he makes a connection and says this: "If we have sown unto you spiritual seed, how much more should we reap material harvest from you?" So he uses the Old Testament and he says, "Hey, the law embedded this principle that those who labor should be compensated for their labor." Then in verses 13 and 14, he uses the Old Testament priesthood as an example. Verses 13, "Do you not know that those who serve in the temple get their food from the temple? And those who serve at the altar share in what is offered on the altar. In the same way, the Lord has commanded," here it is, "that those who preach the gospel should receive their living from the gospel." I mean, guys, it is as clear of a commandment as you can get, that God says, "I want people who receive their spiritual food from a leader to take care of their spiritual leader." There's another passage in Galatians chapter 6, verse 6, which says this: "Nevertheless, the one who receives instruction in the word should share all good things with their instructor." And that word communicate is the old word, means to share in generous provision for. It means to give. So people who receive instruction should give their instructor. There's also, of course, 1 Timothy chapter 5, 17 and 18. It says, "The elders who direct the affairs of the church are well worthy of double honor, especially those whose work is preaching and teaching. For Scripture says," and this is the second time this passage in Deuteronomy is quoted in respect to this, "Do not muzzle an ox while it is treading out the grain, and the worker deserves his wages." While it is true that double honor includes things like respect, it is unquestionably talking about honoring them by financially supporting them. And so God does design for those that are in full-time vocational work to be able to give their lives as exclusive to it as they can. And a part of that is them being compensated accordingly. So that's really the first point. But the second one ties into it. I'll kind of put these together and then we can dice this out. Point number two is, it is possible, though, however, that pastors may voluntarily make their income from other sources for the sake of the gospel. So that's Paul's whole argument, 1 Corinthians 9, 7 through 14. But then listen to this, verse 15. "But I have not used any of these rights, and I am not writing this to you in hope that you will do such things for me. I would rather die than have anyone deprive me of this boast. What is my reward? Just this, that in the preaching of the gospel I may offer it free of charge, so that not to make," watch this, "full use of my rights as a preacher of the gospel." Paul's whole argument is preachers should be compensated, but I was willing in this case to lay down that privilege and right for your sake. So there may be opportunity of someone to gather their income from outside sources for the sake of the gospel. Maybe the church needs it. Maybe the church can't pay them. Maybe they just want to be a blessing. Maybe they're in a situation where culturally it's been a challenge or whatever. I think I remember the first time I met somebody like this years ago. I was doing a revival meeting for a guy up in Indiana, and he was an executive for the Pilot Corporation, the Pilot Truck Stop Corporation.
Yeah.
He did not take a salary from the church. In fact, I remember, I'll never forget this man. I was leaving one time from his church, and he gave me $1,000 gift card to Pilot. That was back in the early 2000s. You may as well handed me $1 million, man. I mean, it covered our gas for like weeks. And he was just wealthy. He had a great job, and he felt like God wanted him to pastor. And leaving his career to do that didn't make any sense. He was well able to do the responsibilities of teaching and preaching and preparing. So he voluntarily turned away from his job as an executive I'm sorry, he voluntarily turned away the wages from his job as a pastor while receiving wages as an executive. And there's
Mhm.
absolutely nothing wrong with that. In this particular case, Paul could not be, he didn't want to be, as he says, a financial burden to this particular church. Another place, in fact, in Corinth, we know from Acts chapter number 18, verses 1 through 3, that Paul was a tent maker during this time. Paul supported himself not to be a financial burden to this new group of believers, and got a job, man. He
Yeah.
made tents, tent maker. He was a trades worker. So listen to this. I think this is interesting. While Paul made this choice, it was a mission. It had a missional purpose rather than a mandate.
Mm.
So it's very clear from the text, man. You are supposed to be able to receive compensation to be a spiritual teacher, preacher, but you can voluntarily not accept that for one reason or the other, in order for you to be a blessing to a church that can't afford it, maybe, or to not to receive accusations, etc. From in other words, it provided him a counterattack for people that would have suggested he was doing this for greed. But
Yeah.
it didn't mean he had to do it. It
Yeah.
means he was willing to do it. And I think that's an important distinction. So you're supposed to receive compensation, number one, biblical. But number two, it is possible that you could say, no, I don't want to receive income for any number of reasons. It could be, I mean, I know more than one person that has a lucrative career. I won't name their names, but they love to preach the gospel. They want to preach the gospel, but it wouldn't even make any sense for them to just turn away from that in order to do that if they were in the right circumstance. It might be that you're in the right circumstance to do it.
Yeah.
Either way, it's a voluntary sacrifice, and it would and should not be used by churches to justify not supporting their pastor, listen, when they are able to.
Yeah. 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 Because I think that's a lot of times the, you hear about the greedy or not greedy, stingy old deacon board, who
Yeah.
tells their pastor, they'll pull this passage out and say, well, Paul was a tent maker, brother. And, to use that as an excuse to not pay your pastor that's not what we're talking about. It's really, it's on the pastor in this situation. If he decides
Yep.
that he wants to be a blessing, and he wants to be a tent maker or whatever you call it, then he can. But it's certainly not an excuse that a church or deacon board, whatever, can use to not pay the pastor, not pay them a decent wage.
100%. We'll talk about that, I think, down the road here a little bit, but you're exactly right. This is no excuse for the church, and the churches, as we'll see, I think in point 4 and 5, do have a responsibility, and we'll look at that. But even more so, I think we'll talk later in this discussion about how to set up healthy practices and how to be reasonable about what a pastor should actually make. Not should he make money, but what should he make?
Yeah.
There's a reasonable way to do that. One more thing I want to say just on this essentially what would be bivocational, although I think I'm getting ahead of myself here a little bit as well. Listen, when you do this, there's some things you need to be aware of. You will have time, energy, focus, division, if this is what you are. So you have to be wise in how you set up your church and the organization in order for you to be able to accomplish this, if this is what God's leading you to do. The average full-time pastor out there, that small church, that 100 range, 7,500 range, he's pulling a lot of weight. His time and compensation is greatly justified without a large staff and those sorts of things. But if you need to take another job, okay, you just know you're going to have to. There's going to be some divided time and energy and focus here. So you're going to have to find a way to ensure that the operations of the church are managing well, in terms of volunteers or potential other part-time staff, whatever it might be. Just something you have to be aware of. But you're well within your biblical right to do that if that's what you choose to do.
Yeah, but I think needless to say, the situation you're describing with, a pastor or a guy who happens to have a great lucrative job and then is essentially volunteering to be a pastor, that's actually pretty rare. If you can
Very
reach
rare.
that point, great. That's awesome. Like,
Mm-hmm.
more power to that guy. I wish there were more guys. And maybe, for the few, for maybe those who listen who aren't church leaders and you're involved in the church, maybe think about that. How can you step up and help your church? Maybe not lead pastor, but I think, Brian, you've talked about your youth pastor is kind of in that position there. He's
He is.
got a great job, but he's volunteering to be a youth pastor. So I think that's great. But needless to say, again, it is rare. And so I think most guys are going to find themselves in a position where, they need the income from the church, but they also, and again, we're getting a little ahead of ourselves, they need the income from elsewhere because of this third point, because pastors, just like everyone, have that solemn responsibility of taking care of their families financially.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, no pastor is exempt from the basic biblical mandate that every man has a human responsibility to provide for his household. In fact, it's a prerequisite for pastoral leadership in the first place. 1 Timothy 3, 4, and 5 says we need to be able to manage our own family well and see that our children obey him. He's got to be able to take care of his family well first. Managing his own family obviously inherently includes the financial provision and stewardship of the same. A pastor who neglects his family financially disqualifies himself from leadership altogether. And then there's the direct statement, 1 Timothy 5:8. Anyone who does not provide for their relatives, especially for their own household, those within his own walls, has denied the faith and is worse than an unbeliever. That's a strong statement for all believers. It's especially true of those who would be in spiritual leadership. Now, I want to say this. There's a lot of new shocking things that we're discovering about income and finances in our world today. One of which is I saw a post the other day about the new low average in America. The new average in all states, all 50 states. The average basement income for someone to be able to live comfortably. Now, I know that can be subjective, but to be able to pay your bills, save, do all the things that you really probably want to do. The new basement household income to live comfortably is about $80,000, all 50 states. And you think about that. Now, most people in America are dual income. I mean, most guys that are out there working are making more than $40,000. Their wife is probably doing the same. But that really has an impact on pastoral ministry, and it really has an impact on now, living comfortably and providing for your family are two different things.
Sure.
When it's providing for your family, that means food, that means housing, that means clothing, that means shelter, the things that are necessity. If you could not pay your necessity bills, you could not feed your family, you could not house your family, you could not clothe your family, you could not provide medical expenses and care for your family. I would think those right there would be the basic human needs. Provide transportation for whatever it is. I'm not talking about internet. I'm talking about the needs. If you could not provide for your family with what you're making as a pastor, you need to find a way to make that happen. And churches who are able should fully make sure that their pastors' compensation is taken care of. I know we're now bridging into number 4 here, but I think some of these kind of go together more naturally. But here at the end of the day, you cannot say, if you're a pastor, well, they just don't pay me enough, we just have to deal with it. No.
Yeah.
No, you go get another job, find another church. It might be the best thing for you to do is just get that side income or that additional income and do the best you can. I've been working with the churches looking for a pastor recently, and they're honestly, man, they're offering a very abysmal salary for their new pastor. And I've talked to them about this. I said, guys, it's not going to work. I mean, you need to understand, if you're only offering this much money, which is fine, if that's all you can do, you need to understand this pastor is going to absolutely need additional work, or his wife's going to have to work in order for them to be able to survive. And
Mhm.
it's not biblical. It's not right. It's not healthy. It's not good in any way. And then I think this applies campus wide. I don't think it just applies to pastors. I think it also applies to pastors and leaders who are looking to hire staff. You should not be
Mm.
bringing your staff in on poverty level.
Yeah.
I've seen there's still Christian schools paying their teachers $25,000 a year. Are you kidding me? We should be ashamed of ourselves.
Yeah.
It's one of the reasons why there's only mostly women in Christian education, is because basically they're working the side job while their
Yeah.
husband is making the primary income. It's still not right. It's still not
Yeah.
right to pay when the public education system, I think, is way over 50,000 entry level. We're not right if we're doing that. And I know as recent as a couple of years ago, I talked to a situation right here in our town. And when they told me that's what because they said we need a teacher, and I was my first question, well, how much do you pay? It just helps me when I talk to somebody, and they told me, I almost choked on the water I was drinking. And I was like, dude, who are you going to get to come for that? And of course, then on the other hand, they say, well, that's just, you got to sacrifice for the Lord. No, actually, you have to take care of your responsibilities.
Yeah.
And if ministry can't do it, you either find a new ministry or find a supplemental job. And if the church tries to bully you into that and say, no, brother, you just need to serve the Lord and sacrifice for it, you need to tell them that they're going to be looking for a new pastor.
Yeah.
Now, if they can't, it's not an issue if they can't. If they can't pay you, you could be willing to stay and volunteer. That's awesome.
Mhm.
Praise the Lord. We've already covered that. But the next point here, number 4, is this: churches are instructed to honor and care for their pastors. The local church has a mandate to actively and generously provide for those that lead for them spiritually. Elders, we've already used these verses, but they're right there. The elders who direct the affairs of the church are worthy of double honor. Who's that being directed to?
Mm.
Who honors those elders? Well, it's the people that are under their care. We also know that Paul was a recipient on many occasions from the benevolent blessing of churches that were there helping him, like the Philippians, like the Corinthians, in 1 Corinthians, 2 Corinthians 8 and 9, 1 Corinthians 16, Philippians chapter 4. You get the idea? This is not like a side issue in the Bible. This is a prevalent issue. In fact, here's probably the biggest one for Hebrews 13, 17, 7 and 17. Remember those who have spoken the word of God to you. Consider the outcome of their faith and weigh and imitate their faith. Honor them, essentially. Have confidence in your leaders. Submit to their authority because they watch for your souls. They want to be a benefit to you. Okay. They want to serve the Lord in a joyful way, not a burdensome way. And part of that can be this financial assistance. The bottom line is, man, there's ample stuff in the Bible that says honor the spiritual leader, take care of their needs, pay for them, and so that they can serve you joyfully and not be a burden. I would say this: churches that take care of their pastor or take care of preachers or are generous, generally speaking, can expect to be blessed by God.
Yeah.
There is no benefit to being stingy or greedy with God's money, but to take care of people is always the right thing to do. And I think, I think about our church for just a minute. We have most of our people are part time, but each one of them that are part time have a significant income from another source, and they also have flex in their schedule to be able to serve at the church, like my secretary and my worship pastor.
Yeah.
And the money I give them is just really just an added benefit and bonus, trying to honor them for their work. And that might be one of the keys to solving some of these problems if you need help. But man, trying to bring a guy in full time, expecting him to be in your office for 40 hours a week, and not giving him the money that's commensurate with that sort of expectation is not a good thing. And I think that's on the church. I think that's the
Yeah.
church's responsibility.
Yeah, well, Brian, like you said, you have part-time people that are receiving part-time pay, but that's because you have the expectation of this is part-time pay. I'm not expecting you to live here. I'm not expecting you to dedicate your entirety of your life and your working hours here. And you touched on it. We could talk about this. I know we've actually touched on it before, but the whole mindset of showing up 40 hours a week to a church office, I think in and of itself, regardless if you're full-time, part-time, is outdated. And it's a little controlling. Again, we're not done with this, these talks are about necessarily, but I feel like we could go there at some point later.
When we get to the end of this conversation, we're going to talk about some normal means of grace and reasonable ways to tie all this together. But you're on the right track here, man. We got to be smart. We got to be reasonable. Ministry is different. How do you quantify the early hours that I would put in, or the fact that I was out till 6 o'clock last night, or tomorrow, which is a Wednesday, how that I'll be here in this office at 6 a.m. starting Bible studies with men, training leaders, doing my work, and then capping it with a prayer meeting. I'll be here all day, 6 a.m. to 7:30 p.m. You can't, this whole idea of office hours and 8 to 5, I don't know if you're really even able to do ministry 8 to 5 completely all the way. You got to know, the question is, do you need your pastor to basically be available around the clock? Do you need his full-time attention? Pay him a full-time salary enough that he does not have to go out and get another job. His wife doesn't have to get another job. If not, then don't be bad-mouthing them or bullying them when they can't give full-time effort because they've got to go out and make some other money.
Yeah. And
there's a lot of ways to do that. I think we'll talk about that in one of these other points here, but I think you're right on track there, Luke, with that comment.
Yeah. Well, I think that might be a good time to kind of pause and pick it up in the next episode. Just to kind of give you a tease, we're kind of continuing in this mindset. We're going to talk about some of the maybe theological poor theology, we should say, theological approaches to it on both extremes. And what we're going to start by talking about, kind of the pitfalls of poverty theology. And we can talk more about that in the next episode.
Absolutely, guys. It was good to have you today. We'll pick up this second part of this episode next week. Lord bless you guys. We'll see you next time on the Church Advance podcast.
Thanks again for joining us for this episode. And I do want to remind you to follow us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and wherever you may listen to podcasts. While you're there, be sure to leave us a 5-star review and then share the podcast with other pastors and leaders that you believe this content could be a help to. You can also subscribe to our YouTube channel, where we'd really appreciate it if you'd like this video, and then also share a comment with any thoughts, feedback, or questions you may have. We may just be able to answer those in a future episode. Well, I want to thank you again for joining us as we continue to advance a reformation of fellowship, partnership, and gospel hope amongst Bible-believing pastors and churches. And we'll see you next time right here on the Church Advance podcast.